Hey Paris,
Boy.
and hey everyone else in the audience. This is a first for Paris to join our LinkedIn live events. For those of you who don't know Paris, he's the CEO here at Hop Online, and I invited him to join us today to chat about agencies and going in-house. Which one is best for your company in 2024? Welcome, Paris.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat about this topic. I think it's very timely considering a lot of companies are now reviewing what they did in 2023, wondering if they should take a different approach in the next year. And I think one valid question is, do you need an agency to succeed with your digital marketing, or can you do things in-house? Especially with all the recent AI developments, I think a lot of companies are wondering whether they can take things in-house and obviously optimize what they're doing, or do they still need an agency? So yeah, that's what we're going to chat about today. Obviously, I think we're a bit biased being part of an agency, but I think things are a bit more nuanced and it's worth covering them. Ready for this chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So first things first, do you think companies should consider hiring a digital marketing agency in 2024, and in which cases?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this subject, and I'll also bring in the AI into this discussion too. But I'll start with like pure cost and cost for value, a value for money kind of a thought process, and some of the trade-offs. So I think that everyone should consider agency versus in-house. I think that no one should immediately rule out an agency without doing some thorough analysis. There's always trade-offs. With an in-house role, you have more control. You have a person or a team of people that it will be fully dedicated to you, that you would hope would be thinking about you and your brand and your project every hour of every working day. And so maybe you have a deeper focus. And maybe you would think possibly even a deeper level of commitment. With an agency, and to play devil's advocate, you will almost never get a fully dedicated person. And it's just not how agencies work. So you'll get, instead of having one full-time person, you might get a few people, but they're all going to be fractional in some way because they will have other projects. So you might think or sense that those people might be less committed. You could argue that. So there's one trade-off that typically with an agency selection, you'll actually get more people or more unique brains on the project, but that none of them they'll all be fractional. So, and in terms of cost, if you think about the cost side of it, it can really vary because sometimes an agency is more expensive and sometimes it's cheaper. If you're hiring a really senior person, then oftentimes that for that same budget, you can replace them with several people in an agency.
Yeah, especially top talent is expensive. And if you're not a big brand that can kind of attract top talent who might be interested in the project or in the actual challenging part of the work, I think it becomes easier to choose an agency because people there have a lot more expertise and they're attracted to the dynamics of being in an agency. And not very often top talent wouldn't just go for any kind of company. So it gets even more expensive to attract them.
That's exactly where I was going to, which is to consider the talent distribution. Oftentimes, the people that work in an agency, they tend to be earlier in their marketing careers because working at an agency, it's an accelerator for your career. And most of the time, and I would give this advice to any marketer who's just starting out, maybe recently graduated, is definitely go and work for an agency because the experience that you get will be so much more accelerated than it would be at a company. And you shouldn't worry too much about your salary when you're really young. You should worry about the experience because in a few years at an agency, you would get maybe 20 years of equivalent experience at a company because of the diversity of projects and the pace and the whole environment. Because in an agency, as a marketer, you're surrounded by other marketers and you feed off of that energy and the ideas. So most agencies are going to they tend to be younger people. And then typically a marketer, as they progress in their career, they would go in-house, most likely because of salary. In-house typically can pay more. Larger companies especially can pay more than agencies. So at some point you realize that money matters more than experience, and you've gotten enough experience and you flip, and then you go work in-house. So typically when you're building, if you're hiring and thinking about, do we hire in-house or do an agency, most of the time, if you go with an agency, you're going to have more people. They're going to tend to be a little bit younger, maybe hungrier for the experience. If you go for the in-house solution, you're probably looking at an older, more senior person who's looking for a little bit more of job security and a higher salary. And then you could combine them by having an in-house senior person hired to manage an agency, which is basically a senior person managing junior people. It's just that the
Which usually
juniors are in an
works quite
agency.
well, because even from our perspective as an agency, one issue that we often see is the communication with the point of contact on the side of the client. So even if you decide to work with an agency, you still need someone on the inside that can kind of guide the team, provide them with the necessary information, and usually having a more senior person in-house that can provide that role is beneficial, even if you do decide to go and work with an agency.
Yeah. I would not advise hiring an agency if you don't have at least one fully dedicated senior marketer in your company. An agency can't replace an entire marketing department, I don't think. An agency is great to support and enhance a marketing team. It can fill in gaps, and it can be very, very fungible in that way. It's never a full replacement for a marketing department. I'd also think about from a cost perspective too, is that sometimes the more strategic kind of roles, you might want to have those in-house, but there's still a lot of execution work that needs to happen. And if you're in a high cost country like the US or UK, why get those, why do the execution work in a high cost country when you can do it in a lower cost country? As long as you have a good management structure above it and good strategy that can guide it.
Another
So,
thing I would add here, I think it's also considering if you have a set marketing strategy or that's still in development, because in a lot of cases, I think companies are not really sure what kind of, let's say, strategies they should implement or what channels they should focus on. And in that case, I think having an agency is easier to manage from a cost perspective because you're not, let's say, you're not sure if you should go after, let's say, PPC or do SEO work or whatever. In
mm,
this case, if you have to hire internal talent and you, let's say, hire an SEO expert and in 6 months you decide that you no longer would pursue that as your top priority, then you need to
mhm.
hire another person. Whereas with an agency, I think it's easier to switch services.
Yeah.
So
The nice way of you said it in the nice way. The more blunt way of saying that is it's much, much easier and cheaper to fire your agency than it is to fire your marketer,
yeah.
especially if you're in US or Europe. Most of the time that's very expensive and painful. So the cost of making a mistake is way higher when you're
Yeah.
hiring in-house. If you make a mistake, it's very expensive. If you make a mistake with an agency, you can switch out usually in a month.
And even if you don't switch the agency and you just switch the services, it's still far easier. I mean, even easier
Yeah.
than firing an agency because you
That's
still
true
have
too,
some
Terry. That's a good
contracts.
point because you might be 3 months into an SEO engagement and you figure out we shouldn't be doing SEO here at all. There's too much short-term pressure. We need to flip this over to PPC and say, hey, agency, you guys have a PPC? Oh yeah. Well, can we move our budget over there? Sure. Next month, it's done. But if you've hired an SEO specialist, that person isn't going to next month start doing PPC if that is the new direction.
Yeah. I think we've seen it enough with clients. So I'm speaking from
Yeah.
personal experience here. I think things change a lot within a business, and sometimes you
Yeah.
think something is a priority, and then mid-year you realize that you don't have the resources for it, or you need to steer in another direction. So
Yeah.
having that flexibility is often needed, I think.
And Terry, there's one more reason, which is the most important reason. And I don't want to seem too biased here, but this is the most important reason why hiring an agency is often the better choice. And that is innovation. And this has a little bit to do with AI in a way. But let's say you're a marketing team and you haven't fully figured out the best marketing strategy. You need someone who can innovate. You need a partner. I mean, forget about whether it's in-house or agency. You need someone who's working with you who has an innovative mindset, who can bring new ideas to the table. And usually an agency, because an agency works with so many clients, they have the perspective of what works and what doesn't in certain situations, and they have a depth of experience that you don't really get with an in-house person. They can innovate faster, so they can help you find the right answer quicker. They can help you find the right marketing mix faster or help you get into the right strategy faster. And then maybe when you've discovered that this is exactly the strategy that works and this is the marketing mix that is optimal, then you might want to phase the agency out. Who knows? Maybe then it'll be cheaper to hand off that proven strategy to an in-house team. But if you're in a place where you need to innovate, an agency will help you innovate much faster.
Definitely, I
And
totally agree with
that's
this
even
one.
more true today with AI than it's ever been before.
If I think if we have to summarize the main situations in which you would need an agency or consider having one in addition to an internal team would be first if your current marketing efforts are not yielding the results that you need. Obviously, in this case, probably there's an internal issue and you need an external perspective to help you out and figure what's wrong with your current strategy. Second would be if you cannot afford having an in-house team with top talent. In a lot of cases, having external experts is better than having junior in-house members that will not be able to provide the same results. And then finally, if you're looking to scale, and this is exactly what you were saying with innovation, basically, even if you have the possibility of hiring an in-house team and your current performance is okay, if you want to scale quickly, you can do that much better with an external partner who can always provide you with an external perspective and also new ideas. Because we all know, I think, that if you work on one project, at some point you kind of get stuck into it. I think everyone in their career, even if they haven't worked in an agency, gets to this point where you're just grinding with the same project for, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then you run out of ideas, and having that external perspective is definitely helpful. So where does AI fit into the mix, in your opinion? Obviously, it can kind of replace a lot of the things that in-house teams and agencies are doing. There are a lot of content on this topic. So what do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I'm up to my eyeballs right now in experimenting with AI, and I can't say that I have the answer, a conclusive answer to that question. Only that it is massively impactful, and I know that it's going to be massively impactful for our agency and for all of marketers. And I think that ultimately it's going to disrupt knowledge work as a whole, but it's disproportionately disrupting marketing first for some reason. Maybe it's because marketers create a lot of content and
Because we like innovation as well, I think.
but it
We
has an
have to stay on
outsized,
top of the
yeah, if you look
trends.
at all of knowledge work and then marketing is only one part of that, I think it has an outsized impact today on marketing, and it's forcing marketing teams, agency and in-house or whatever, it's forcing marketing teams to confront it. If you don't confront it, then you have your head in the sand, and if you're an agency, you will be out of business in a couple of years if you don't seriously rework and embed and integrate AI into your service delivery workflows. And that's what we're trying to do right now at every possible point. We're even trying to take an extreme example of saying, let's try to do our services that we deliver today entirely with AI, and let's find out where it breaks. And where it breaks is the only part where humans are still needed. And that might seem kind of cruel or something, but that's the right way to do, is to say, let's try to do everything with AI and then move backwards into the stuff where we can really isolate where human strategy, human creativity, and ingenuity is still irreplaceable. And that still is,
Yeah.
it still is the case. But
Yeah.
when we
To
think
get
about,
there, we still need to go through the process and
yeah,
through the painful realization that some of the things that we are doing might be replaced.
yeah, we're going through a very thorough exercise right now, and you know this, Terry. And I'm challenging all of our team leads who are heading different services to reimagine entirely their services from scratch, knowing what you can do now with AI. And by AI, I'm talking about ChatGPT, really. There's a lot of other tools as well that you can create. You can create audio, video, of course, images. But the first big revolution is about what you can do with text, I think. Images are probably the next one, and then comes video and code. But we don't really produce code. We're not a web dev type of an agency.
I think
But
actually here
text,
there's
image,
a
video, and code.
Yeah, I was gonna say that here actually I think agencies have a big advantage over internal teams because we get to test a lot more tools more quickly and get to
Hmm.
that realization of like what is actually needed to be done by a human and then by AI. I know from the different service teams internally, like whether PPC, SEO, they all use different tools beyond ChatGPT, and they're customized tools that match their specific needs, and they have the expertise to decide on whether this tool is actually useful or not for their work. I had a live with Nicole from our content team last week,
Hmm.
and for example, in the content group, they're heavily using Phrase instead of ChatGPT because it's producing better briefs and it's more useful for from an SEO perspective. So I think that's an interesting insight here for agencies and companies alike, that they need to keep testing different tools, and some might
Hmm.
not produce what they need, but others might be the better solution. So I think it's a dynamic industry, and as you said, nobody has the answers, but it's important to be part of the process and keep researching, basically.
Yeah, and I know that it's a bit frightening for marketers for a good reason, because if you've been a copywriter, then maybe you're feeling a little threatened, or if you're a content writer or anyone that's producing any kind of a asset for a campaign. But I still think what rises to the top is strategy, and to be able to prompt, otherwise get what you need to get out of AI to make it work. But I think that it's going to change drastically how agencies operate. I think that the work will become even more focused on pure creative ideas and strategy, and also data wrangling, I'll call it. That's really important too, because more and more I used to talk, and I still talk a lot about this, which is about the experts at ad platforms. Years ago, they were experts because they knew how to work within the platforms. They knew how to optimize and make things happen inside the platforms. But today, it's actually what the experts are the ones that can bring data, the right data, into the platforms. And to an extent, it's the same is true with AI. You get out of it what you put into it. So if you want to get great output out of ChatGPT or other tools, you have to have great inputs. And the marketers are the ones that bring in those inputs. It could be data, or it could be other types of information or documents, or
knowing what
instructions
kind
or
of
prompts.
information to insert. And we've seen that
Yeah,
with our own Hobbot. It got better results after we fed it with information compared to ChatGPT in
yeah.
your latest experiment. So
Yeah, and I keep pitting Hotbot. Hotbot is our our custom GPT that we created, and very soon, Terry, it will be live on our website. I hope even this
awesome.
week. But it does, for a lot of marketing tasks, it does outperform ChatGPT because of the specific instructions and the unique data that we fed it. I imagine that all marketing teams will have some type of an agent. You can call it an agent or assistant or bot or whatever, internal or external, public facing, but that should be trained to be the marketing and sales expert for their organization. So it could be public facing as a chatbot on the website, and in effect, the best version of that would replace the website with a conversation. Or it could be internal, and it could be a bot that simply is giving you great feedback on every piece of marketing that you work on, and it saves you a lot of money that you would otherwise waste on A/B tests in real live campaigns. But I think it will be profound, and I think what I know, one of my main missions right now is to try to get out ahead of this. I don't want to be in the group of people that are slow to react and to
left behind.
accept it, acknowledge it, because then we might be dead, and I don't want that to happen. And with clients also, it's not, I think that we need to be very clear with our clients that we are using these tools and we want to collaborate with you in these tools. And we're not going to hide the fact that something that used to take us a couple of weeks now takes us 20 minutes, maybe. We'll be very happy to show you that massive productivity gain, but we will still work together on the basis of that you're hiring us to create value. So as long as, I think there's always going to be a place for agencies, even if agencies that use AI entirely, as long as they can create value. If they can do that better than the alternative, then there's still a very important place for agencies.
Results and transparency, I think, are two important factors to consider when choosing an agency.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what do you think are, some tips that we can give to clients, potential prospects on what to look for in an agency? You've participated in a lot of sales calls, and obviously this is something you keep repeating to prospects, but what should they look for when picking an agency? What are some signals that can help them identify which agencies would really help them scale, get the right results, have good communication, and which ones would be just executors, let's say?
Yeah. I think there are three things to consider. The first is agility. How agile is this agency? Do they have the ability to kill something that's not working really quickly? Do they have a testing mindset? Do they go into every situation with opinions? Do they use data over opinions, really? They don't act according only to their opinions, but they're agile, and they let the data speak.
And can admit their mistakes
the data gives
if
them the
they
right
happen.
answer. Yeah. So can they move on a dime? Are they agile? Because most of the time, the first thing that you try in anything in marketing won't work, actually. So most often you fail out of the gate, and it's how quickly you can recognize that and learn something from it and then make a pivot. And then that pivot might also be a lesser failure, but then there's another learning, and then you make another pivot. So you want these zigzags. The zigzags have to be really quick. Ultimately, they're pointing to the right destination, but they need to be really tight. If you have big, long zigzags, the longer these
you're losing money
zigzags,
every time you're not taking the right decision at the right moment. Yeah.
So it's an agency that has the humility to also recognize that we tried something and it didn't work, and let's not even run it for one more day because that's now waste. We know this is wasteful. So it's done. We're stopping it and we're moving to the next thing. And we already have planned the next thing for this scenario. So agility is number one. Number two is transparency. You want to have an agency that will show you absolutely everything that they're doing. They're not hiding the fact that they're using AI, or they're not hiding any proprietary methods. They're sharing everything with you, but it's also a two-way street, this transparency thing. Because the way that you can help an agency succeed is to be transparent as a client, which means to share information, to share data. And I'm specifically talking about first-party data, CRM kind of data, to share any information that's pertinent for the agency, to absolutely share your goals. If you have a goal that we need to hit this amount of growth, this number of leads, or this pipeline, new pipeline generated, or whatever it is. But transparency in both directions is key for a successful agency partnership. So you need to make sure from the agency that they're willing to share everything. They'll let you look at their task manager or their project management system and invite you in. Then you're really working as a team. It's not us and them, or it's not client and agency vendor. And that brings me to the third major consideration, which is partnership. And the partnership means that you can't even tell that it's an agency. These people might as well just be remote workers some other place. But I feel like they're there right next to me. When I chat, they're there. When I send an email, I get a reply right back. On the meetings, we're talking like we're really colleagues here. I don't have a feeling like this is an outsourced contractor or a vendor, but this is somebody who is part of my team and who really gives a shit about my business as much as anybody else that is a full-time employee. So there shouldn't even be conceptually that there's a second-class
like a
citizen
barrier.
kind of, that it's a real partnership, and it's a long-term partnership. The agency is here to help us succeed, and they're going to do everything they can, and we're partners. So there's nothing, I shouldn't hide anything from them. I should give them everything they need to succeed. And that we have a lot of clients that look at us as true partners, and we have some that don't really, and those are a little disappointing, but that's the agency life. But the clients that come into it thinking, I'm looking for a partner, I'm not looking for an agency, already this is going to change the whole nature of the relationship.
Yeah, and if you look at the long-term results, even for the clients, I mean, those that come in seeking a partner to help them scale actually have far better results long-term. I mean, that's even clear from our case studies. Most of the clients that we do have case studies for and have succeeded in helping them scale their business are companies that have stayed with us for 3-4 years. And that's a clear indication that these companies are looking for partners. If they're looking for someone as a contractor to just help them manage their account, for example, for a few months, you can still get results, but it's definitely not going to be the same success that you would have with an agency that really works as a partner.
Yeah.
And I think actually on the topic of agility, as you were speaking about having the ability to iterate very quickly, I think that's one thing that AI will not be able to replace. It's that ability to analyze the performance and take strategic decisions. It can give you the data, and even today, I mean, Google Ads is suggesting how to optimize your campaigns, but sometimes that takes longer just because the companies supporting obviously these tools want to make sure that they're not taking any risks, but sometimes risks need to be taken, and I think in this regard, people have an advantage because they can take decisions even if they're not, sometimes it's a hunch and not a data-driven decision, but it's still leading to better results. So I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else do you think we're missing in terms of DIY or agency? Anything that companies should keep in mind, or have we covered the basics?
Yeah, I would say in terms of process, if you're going through a process of hiring an agency, I think the best process is to try to get some kind of small work sample or deliverable from them to get a feeling of the quality of the work. And one thing that we do for free with limits when we talk to all prospects is we do a little bit of research and analysis to try to show them forecast. So if we have limited information at the time of that sales process, but we can go out and we can research keywords, or we can research topics, whatever it might be. We can look at some audiences, and we can build a forecast with some assumptions and say, this is what it might look like, and this is what we think we can achieve under reasonable conditions if we work together. So I think it's very reasonable to expect that from an agency. If the agency says, look, we have no idea, we can't really show you anything until we start working. So you have to hire us, and then we can do the research and we can dig in. I think that to some degree it is true that an agency, to do a full discovery strategy audit process, they need 1 or 2 months usually at the beginning to go really deep, and the client should be patient and wait for that. But some sliver of that needs to be shown in the pre-hiring process. You need to
You
have
still need to have an idea what you're getting into.
Yeah, you need to have a taste of it. And then maybe this is more advice for agencies right now, but be ready to have maybe put a few hours worth of an expert's time into that kind of work to show them that you're capable of doing really thoughtful research and building a forecast that certainly has a lot of assumptions in it because it's very limited, but show them a forecast that here's what we think we can achieve. And that, I think that's something that's very reasonable to expect from a client or a hiring side.
This is a good tip, and it's actually quite timely because I'm actually working on an article with Tessie, which would give exactly directions for companies on things that they can look out for when deciding whether to work with an agency. And I think having that little snippet of insights before they sign that long-term contract, it's a good one. So I'll definitely include it in our guide along with some other things.
And I mean, last bit of advice, just to come back to AI, I think that every marketing manager out there needs to really understand how they can use it and how they can work with it. So even if you're approaching the agency versus in-house decision with that in that kind of a context, then I mean, an agency who's testing AI across probably dozens of projects will have a lot more experience and insight into how to incorporate AI for your company's marketing as opposed to an in-house hire. So if your job and one of your main jobs as a marketing manager should be to be able to report to your CEO by very soon, here's how we need to be using AI, this is the limits, and this is how it can make us more productive, more efficient, more profitable, more successful. If that's what you need to figure out, then an agency partner most likely will help you get to that answer much faster.
Totally. Awesome. I think that's a great wrap up to this conversation. I hope it was useful for the people listening. And yeah, let's wrap it up. And if you guys have any questions or want to have a follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're active on LinkedIn, so we'll respond shortly. And thank you, Paris, for this conversation.
Thanks, Terry. It was fun.
Yes, let's do it again sometime. Awesome. Have a good evening, everyone.